Hello, everybody. As everyone is aware, at the centerpiece of our parsha of Tisa is the incident of the golden calf, the Maaseh HaEgel. In this connection, there is a interesting Gemara in Masechet Shabbos on Daf Yud Zayin, where the Gemara is discussing one of the many halachic disputes between the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel. And there was the usual debate going on. And Oso Hayom, on that particular day, when it came to taking a vote to decide the halacha, there were more students in the school of Shammai than there were in the school of Hillel, and the opinion of Beis Shammai prevailed. The Gemara tells us, they were discussing issues of Tumah, the Gemara tells us that Oso Hayom, Haya Hillel kafuf v'yoshev lifnei Shammai ke'echad min hatalmidim. There was a rather unfortunate scenario, keeping in mind that the highest authority was Hillel, who held the office of Nasi, whereas Shammai held the office of Av Bet Din. He was the number 2 position, whereas Hillel was in the top position. And nonetheless, because the opinion of Shammai and Beit Shammai prevailed on that day, Hillel sat there somewhat humbled, as if he was but just another one of the students, and he sat there in front of Shammai. V'hayakasha Yisrael. This day was as difficult and unfortunate for Am Yisrael, ki yom shenasa bo egel, as was the day on which the Egel Hazav had been fashioned. Now, even allowing for somewhat of hyperbole here, one wonders what's the connection between the unfortunate situation where Beit Shammai prevailed over Beit Hillel and a day of a catastrophe where the fashioning of the Egel Hazav took place. I saw a very interesting explanation from a Rav Eliyahu Regular, who was a student of the very famous Reb Chaim of Volozhin, not Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, but Reb Chaim of Volozhin, who was the Talmud Muvhak of the Gaon of Vilna. His student was Reb Eliyahu Regular, and he notes the following. We know that in general the halacha in disputes between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is in accordance with Beit Hillel, and that as a general rule, Beit Hillel are the Mekilim, they are the lenient ones, and Beit Shammai espouses the Chumrah position. They are more strict, if you will. There are exceptions, but that's the general klal. And he goes on to explain that perhaps Beis Shammai were machmirim because their halachic philosophy was such that one works according to din, according to the strict letter of the law, whereas Beis Hillel had a tendency towards kulas and leniencies because their philosophy in halacha was more geared towards chesed. We know that in this world that God brought about with the tempering of judgment with chesed, and in fact, as the pasuk says, biyom asot Hashem Elokim, on the day that Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which represents Midas Harachamim, chesed, and Elokim represents Midas Hadin, as opposed to the original thought with which Torah opens Bereshit bara Elokim without any mention of Hashem's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. So in this world where Chesed is partnered with Din, the halacha is like Beit Hillel, who actually were geared towards Chesed and Kula. But La'asid Lavo, in the future, on a day when there will be universal recognition of Hashem, Hashem Echad, U'Shmo Echad, then things will work more according to Midat Hadin. And at that time in the future, we will paskin like Beit Shammai and not like Beit Hillel. Why did Bnei Yisrael fashion the Egel Hazav? And here comes a very unique perspective on the sin of the Egel Hazav. Of course, there are many other interpretations as well. Bnei Yisrael were witness to the phenomenal revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu at Matan Torah b'Sinai, and the giving of the Aseret HaDibrot in particular. Hashem spoke directly with the people, and they mistakenly thought that they had reached the shlav, the stage, where the world was ready as one to fulfill Hashem Echad Ushmo Echad. And therefore, when they call upon Aaron to fashion the Egel Azav, Kum Aseh Lanu Elohim, which is mindful of the concept of Midas Hadin. They thought that it was time to paskin and to conduct themselves in the halachic philosophy of what later came to be known as the school of Shammai. But this was a tragic mistake. This was a wondrous event, Matan Torah b'Sinai, but we were not yet ready for that universal recognition of Hashem. And therefore, when Beis Shammai prevails over Beis Hillel in the waning days of Bayit Sheni, and Hillel sits there humbled before Beit Shammai, the Midat HaChesed, the Midah of Kula, had to defer to Midat Hadin and Chumrah of Beit Shammai. This was the very same mistake that their forebearers had made in the aftermath of Matan Torah b'Sinai. Unfortunately, we have not yet reached that stage, even in our day, although we fervently pray that it come quite speedily and in our own time. So we are still left with the concept of tempering judgment with chesed, with midas harachamim. And if that's something that is true from a halachic perspective, it should also be guiding us in our personal behavior as individuals and as a community. Shabbat Shalom.